Today is Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, and this is Read Through the Bible.
Hi, everyone.
And today is...
It's our recap edition of First Chronicles.
Oh.
So earlier today, we did the episode of the last chapter of First Chronicles, which is chapter 29, David's prayer when the temple is... all the things are being donated. And then this afternoon, we are doing an overview of the book of First Chronicles.
Okay, so the reason we're doing this is really just because as we read through the scriptures, we're encouraging you to write down a notebook or in a book that I wrote with spaces, like what happens in each chapter. Just it's a little bit extra just to try to help you what was read. And now what we're doing is we're looking at those summaries and kind of stepping back and try to summarize the summaries in a micro-summary way.
Mm-hmm. And look for any patterns that we see, themes that are occurring, structural things that are happening.
Yeah, and just to remember what First Chronicles is about. Now, in every episode of First Chronicles, in the show notes, I have linked a picture that Steve Thomason drew about First and Second Chronicles, but it applies here at First Chronicles a lot. Steve Thomason calls himself the art pastor.
Yeah, he has just fantastic drawings.
Yeah, great insight.
Really capture things from the Bible well.
Yeah, so if you've never really looked over that, just now would be a good time. Yvonne, why don't you describe the picture, what it's like?
Yeah, so it's got three people. It's got David, Solomon, and the chronicler. And the chronicler is the author of this book, and he, if you remember, is writing after the exiles who had been in Babylon and in Persia were going back to Jerusalem, and he's writing about the history of their people. And but as he's looking at the history of what happened, he's looking through rose-colored glasses. So he's not really seeing all the flaws, and he's not trying to go into every detail. And he's focusing on the throne and on the temple. And so it shows the chronicler looking through his glasses and at David and Solomon. And with David, he's called the mastermind because he's preparing for building the temple. Mm-hmm. He also has his foot over a hill that says victory over enemies. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we learn about David is preparing for the temple and then his victories over enemies. And then with Solomon, it says he's the builder. And he's going to build the temple. Yep,
and we're going to read about that in Second Chronicles, actually, Solomon building the temple. But I love this picture of David. Look, he's got his treasures there that he's able to donate to the temple. And in his mind, there's like this thought bubble that's got this temple there. And he's also got these scrolls in his hand, which says building plans of what he's going to do. And all these singers are just rejoicing at all the good of what's happening. And the chronicler is writing after the exile, trying to give vision for the returning exiles for what their kingdom can be all about. Just about this reestablishment of the throne of David and this temple that needs to be built.
Right. And it's interesting when you think about David, the big things emphasized here are his victory over the enemies and then preparing for the temple. And really, he did that, I think, to very much like prepare the way so that Solomon could be an even greater king. So he fought off all these enemies so that Solomon could reign in peace, and that Solomon could reign in peace and be able to have the freedom and the resources to build a beautiful temple.
Yeah, and I do think that after the temple is built and the rejoicing, this is the peak, the pinnacle of the history of Israel.
Yeah, very much so.
With Solomon, this great, wise, wealthy king in a time of peace, having built this temple for them to worship the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And standing on the foundation that David laid.
Yep. Okay, so now turning our attention to First Chronicles, which begins to tell the story about David, the mastermind behind the one who's going to plan and build this temple. We start First Chronicles with 9 chapters of genealogies. Mm-hmm. And this takes us basically from Adam until the time of Saul, is basically what it talks about, but shows, focuses upon the Levites, that is the priestly people, and upon Judah, which is the kingly tribe.
Right, that David comes from.
Because that's what it's all about. It's about the king, the throne, and it's about the priests in the temple. It's kind of where those genealogies focus. And then, at the end of the book, beginning in chapter 22, we see the temple preparations really being made.
Right, in detail and in earnest.
Yeah, but it's not so much the temple as much as it is establishing the framework of the structure of the people so that they can support this big building project that they're going to be doing.
As well as gathering the supplies.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to work through the summaries here, unless there's something else you want to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and so then that leaves from 10 through 21.
Yes.
Really tells the story of David's victories and three chapters about the ark, bringing the ark in, and then chapter 17 is really important. It's the covenant that God makes with David, again, just like 2 Samuel 7.
Yeah, but you slide everything in those chapters. But okay, was David victory over his enemies in this chapter, or is there focus on the ark, or is it the one chapter where it's focusing on God's covenant with him?
Right.
So even that's like a big picture. If you want to just remember that, that's your micro summary, 1 through 9 genealogies. 10 through 21 is David's victories with a focus on the temple and his covenant. And then chapters 22 through 29 are preparing for the temple.
Yeah.
Like, that's good enough.
And again, that's all about the throne of David and the temple.
Yep. So now for the sake of each chapter, we're going to go through each of these chapters just really quick to just kind of give you a real short summary. You can write this as well. But I hope you see what we're doing here, right? We're kind of reading every word and then getting a summary of the chapter, and now we're backing off to get maybe a summary of the chapter. We've even given you a higher level summary of just even the entire book, and just that is so helpful in understanding the Bible.
So it's like we're on the ground, and then we're in a drone, and we're flying up higher.
And then we're in a helicopter, and then we're in a hot air balloon, and then we're in an airplane. Right, we're just getting up.
And you see patterns once you get up high enough, and that's what we're looking for.
Okay, so chapters 1 through 9 are genealogies. So in chapter 1, we have a genealogy of...
From Adam to Noah to Abraham to Jacob.
Yep, not much to comment there. Chapter 2 is...
Sons of Judah.
Yeah, and chapter 3 is...
Sons of David.
Yep, so here's the focus upon the kingly line is what that is. And then chapter 4 we have...
Sons of Judah and Simeon.
Yeah, those would be like southern tribes. And then chapter 5 is...
Sons of the eastern tribes.
Yep, so the eastern tribes are...
Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh.
Yep, so if you know those, you can write those names in. But if not, eastern tribes, so that's east of the Jordan. In chapter 6, we have...
Sons of Levi and their land.
Yeah, because the Levi, remember, they got land all over the place to be able to support, like in a pastoral role, in a priestly role, all the people in all the different portions of the land. So they were given like these different cities.
Rather than one big chunk.
Yep. Okay, and in chapter 7 we have...
The sons of the northern tribes.
Yep, so this would be not Reuben, Gad, half of Manasseh, nor the southern sides of Judah and Simeon.
Simeon and Benjamin.
Yep, but all the northern tribes.
All the others.
All the others. Okay, and then in chapter 8...
Sons of Benjamin.
Yep, that would be focused on Saul.
Right, because Saul came from the tribe of Benjamin.
Yep, okay, and then chapter 9 is a little bit different, but it's...
So chapter 9 catches us up to when the time of the chronicler was writing, and so that's the returned exiles.
Yep, so that shows he's writing after the exile, that he knows these things. He's talking about all these people who are returning. Okay, so that's 1 through 9. That's the first section. The next section is chapter 10 through 21, which basically tells of David's victories or his focus on the temple or the covenant that he received, except for chapter 10, which really simply deals with...
That is the defeat and death of Saul.
Yep. Okay.
Which is really how David became king.
Yep.
Like, he became king because Saul died.
Okay, and chapter 11.
David anointed king, his mighty men.
Yeah, he's anointed king at Hebron initially, and there's a list of these mighty men. Okay, chapter 12.
Flashback, warriors who joined David.
Okay, so in other words, what's a flashback?
So that's a flashback back to before Saul had died, and when Saul was chasing David, and when David was on the run in the wilderness, a lot of people just came and joined David and joined in his cause and protected him, and that grew to a large number.
Yeah, and so that is the very thing that allowed David then to take the throne.
Right, because those people made him king after Saul died.
Which is a focus of the chronicler. He wants to show how important the throne is and the rulership of David. Okay, and now comes a focus upon worship and the temple and the ark with chapter 13.
So 13, Uzzah touched the traveling ark. Okay, so right. David's trying to bring the ark into Jerusalem to give it a permanent place.
Yeah, and everything was messed up in this chapter.
They transported it the wrong way, and Uzzah died in the process.
Yeah, on a cart, it tipped over. Uzzah touched it. God's holiness says, don't touch it. He died, and so then the ark rested in the house of Obed-Edom for 3 months before it was coming into Jerusalem. But here's like the first attempt. Here's what they did. And so, there's lots there of detail, but if you just remember Uzzah touching the ark, you can remember, why did he touch the ark? Because it was on a cart, it was wobbling, he touched it, he was struck dead. And they went to the house of Obed-Edom. So that's all happening there. Just we try to summarize it really short. Okay, chapter 14.
David's wives and defeat of Philistines.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you remember that chapter, but that's where David really inquired, shall I go up and fight? How shall I fight? And God kind of directs him how to defeat the Philistines.
And maybe it's kind of a picture of how he always fought his battles. Just seeking the Lord first to know what to do.
Yep, and really conquering them. Okay, so then in chapter 15...
The ark is carried into Jerusalem.
Yeah, finally coming in with songs and dancing and celebration of all this. But again, this is a focus upon the temple. Well, the temple that will be born. And then chapter 16?
The ark is placed in the tent.
Yeah.
So David designed, I think, a very nice tent for the temporary place in Jerusalem before the temple would be built.
Yep.
And the ark was placed there.
Yep, just like the tabernacle was. That's what was going on there. Okay, chapter 17 is a big chapter.
Okay, Davidic covenant and David prays.
Yeah, and this is just like 2 Samuel chapter 7. The big covenant, that's the Davidic covenant. That's the kingdom aspect of the focus here. Okay, and then we have just more victories coming on. So chapter 18.
David's victory over all his enemies.
Yeah, and there's a verse there in chapter 18 that just says that the Lord gave victory to David on every side. Chapter 18, verse 13. And the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went.
So it just kind of sums up all of his victories.
Yep,
right there.
okay, chapter 19.
Hanun disgraced David's men.
Yeah, that's when David has sent these men to try to console Hanun for the death of his father. And Hanun's men said, oh, they're spies. And so they shaved their beards and they cut off their shirts and kind of went to walk about. They're very shamed. As a result of that, then, I didn't have time to put in here just more, but this is where some other people, the Ammonites and the Amorites, I think, are defeated.
There's more victories.
There's more victories, maybe you can put it that way. The Ammonites and the Syrians are defeated. Okay, and then we get chapter 20.
Joab struck down Rabbah and giants killed.
Yep, those are the giants in the line of Goliath. And this is Joab striking down these people. Okay, chapter 21.
David's census and plague purchases threshing floor.
Yep. So there's where he chose to have a census. Joab says, no, don't. He did. And then there's this plague killing 70,000 men. And then this threshing floor is purchased, which is where the temple is going to be.
Yeah, and this is a flaw of David that is actually described here in this book. But I think what we see from when David sins and takes the census, he is extremely repentant when he realizes his wrong. And he actually wants to make a sacrifice and build an altar. And he builds the threshing, or he builds the altar, but he buys a threshing floor in order to do so, which eventually becomes the plot of land on which the temple is going to be built.
Yep.
So it ties into the story. So even though it's a flaw, we see David's repentance, and then it leads to the land for the temple.
Okay, we've reached the last section then of the book of 1 Chronicles 22 through 29, which is the end. And this is really where temple preparation begins.
Right.
In fact, that's in chapter 22. That's what we have, right?
Okay, temple preparation, Solomon appointed.
Yeah, so here's where it says, okay, we're going to start to build the temple. We're going to start to provide for the temple. But Solomon is going to be the one who actually is the one who does it. He's named in this chapter, and he'll come up at the end.
God chooses him very clearly as David's successor.
Okay, and then chapters 23 through 27 is just David organizing all these people. In 23, he organizes
Levites.
In chapter 24, he organizes.
Priests.
In chapter 25, he organizes.
Musicians.
In chapter 26, he organizes.
Gatekeepers.
And 27, he organizes.
Military commanders.
Yeah, okay. And then in chapter 20, now all the people are organized to have the superstructure to build this temple. Then in chapter 28,
David charges Israel and Solomon.
Yeah, just kind of charges them to trust the Lord and to complete this process. And then chapter 29 is a great chapter.
David gives,
Yep.
prays, and dies.
Yep.
And Solomon's made king.
Yep. So maybe a little bit more than 6 words there. But that's where David says, hey, look at all that I've given, and the leaders give, and the people give, and then he prays. And that verse 11, yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty, for all that's in the heavens and the earth is yours. Yours is the kingdom, O Lord, and you are exalted as head over all. That's how he prays, that God is to be glorified even in the building of the temple. It's not about human ingenuity. It's about God, who is the one who's worthy to be praised. And then he makes Solomon king and he dies. Is really what happens. Okay, there's the book of 1 Chronicles. Sum it up in one sentence. Victories establish the throne. So there's peace for Solomon to build the temple.
Yep.
Okay, and we will then see you tomorrow morning in the book of 2 Chronicles. Okay. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.